Hello and welcome to Actual English. I'm Jennifer Clyde. It's time for lesson 321 and we're going to start a brand new topic. Let's talk about English language. So it's part 1 and today let's focus on evolution. How it's evolutionized, okay, how it's developed gradually over time. So evolution is a gradual change or development in something that usually occurs over a long period of time. Not something that changes instantly, but rather over a long time. Okay? So with that in mind, let's begin by listening to today's actual talk. Here we go.
My grandma's gotten an iPad, and so we are constantly texting back and forth nowadays. And I love it because she uses all of the slang from the 50s.
Wow.
If I say something that's surprising, she'll be like, jeepers, or gee whiz. And it's like these words that I totally forgot even existed.
Yeah.
It's like a flashback.
Yeah.
How do you feel about slang and how it's evolving? I mean, language is ever evolving, right? How do you feel about where it's going these days?
Language is an evolving group of words that become popular and they drift in and out of society. And we have to accept as well that as the world's getting smaller and each country starts to use English more and more, that will affect it as well.
Right.
But I have to admit, it's one of my biggest pet peeves is the way that we use language today.
Yeah.
I teach as well, so I see my children using it all the time.
Right.
And go on, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that's when it became frustrating for me as well. I didn't really pay attention to it until I started seeing my students write, I wanna go, W-A-N-N-A. And also now I notice it in myself after being in a non-English speaking country for so long. When I go to write emails to graduate schools in America or something like that, I really have to think hard about this is not a text message.
Yes.
I can't write LOL or
Definitely.
BRB or GONNA. You know, I have to use proper words.
Yeah, we allow ourselves to get caught up in that idea of fast communication with people to get the information that we need as quickly as possible.
Right.
That smartphone society that we've become.
Right.
But we really have to take a step back from that because it's making us really stupid.
Right.
And it's something that if we're not careful, I think we will lose that ability forever.
Right.
And I think we really need to take a step back and realize that language is special and we shouldn't make it just about getting the information that we need. I think it's a real shame.
Yeah, definitely.
Yes, it is true. Language is evolving. It has evolved and it will continue to evolve in the future, way into the future. So there have been many changes, many developments in language, not only in English language, but in many other languages as well. But I would have to say, just as, Martin and Mary has mentioned, there have been changes made to language, but not all of the changes are good. Okay, there have been negative changes as well, and those are the problems or the changes that these two have been talking about today. So let's take a look at the actual talk conversation. Here we go. Mary says, my grandma has gotten an iPad. So we're constantly texting back and forth nowadays. Now I have added each other to help you understand. This part was omitted, but now you're texting each other. Usually you write a text message and the other person replies. So each other meaning back and forth, okay? It could be omitted. So she says, since my grandma has gotten an iPad, we are constantly, endlessly texting back and forth nowadays. Okay? Back and forth means what? In one direction and in the other direction, repeatedly. So back and forth, which means to go this way and then to come back and forth. We can walk back and forth, okay? So you're moving from one point to another, and then from that point to this point, back and forth, in one direction and back to that direction, repeatedly. So basically she's saying that they text each other very often. And I love it because she uses all of the slang from the 50s. That's cute. So her grandma uses slang from the 50s, the 1950s. And she gives an example. Mary says, if I say something that is surprising, she'll be like, or she'll say, jeepers, or gee whiz. Okay. These are 1950s slang. So this is what you would say in a situation where you're surprised. Jeepers, gee whiz, things like that. Jeepers. Gee whiz, I think, was used even in the 80s. I remember using gee whiz in the 80s, mid-80s, maybe not in the 90s, but yeah, in the 80s, gee whiz was used. Geez, gee whiz was used, but jeepers, that's definitely very old slang from the 50s. So she's giving us an example of what her grandmother would say. Slang she would use, such as jeepers or gee whiz, when she hears something that is surprising. And she says, it's these words that I'd totally forgotten even existed. So these words are the words that I did not even think existed. I forgot they existed. It's like a flashback. Okay? A flashback is something. Think of a flash of light. Okay? Like lightning, it flashes. It becomes bright all of a sudden, right? Instantly, suddenly. So flashback are these thoughts that come to your mind. These thoughts that you remember instantly for a very short time. Flashbacks often hit you and disappear. Okay? So these, I guess, moments of the past that just come to you instantly and they vanish. So she says, it's like a flashback. How do you feel about slang? So she asks this question to Martin. How do you feel about slang? And how it's evolving? She asks this question. Evolve means what? As I mentioned, it means to change or develop gradually over a long period of time. So she's asking, what do you feel about slang? And how do you think language is evolving? I mean, language is ever evolving, meaning it's constantly evolving, constantly developing and changing. But how do you feel about where it's going these days? Where it's going? Well, language cannot go somewhere physically, right? But she's saying, how do you think, or what do you think about where it's going, where it's leading to, or what it is leading to, how it's changing? Okay, she's talking about the current changes that are happening to language. What do you think about them? Well, here we go. Martin says language is an evolving group of words. Yes, that's true. That become popular, and they drift in and out of society. So drift in and out. Drift. Something drifts, okay? Something can drift on water. It means to move slowly in and out from one place, okay? So drift in and out means to slowly move into one place and slowly move out of that place. Drift in and out of society. So he's talking about language. It's evolving, okay? It becomes popular. And these words drift in and out of society. They come and they disappear. We have to accept as well that as the world is getting smaller and each country starts to use English more and more, that will affect it as well. So he's saying that the world is getting smaller, meaning that more and more people are using a common language, which happens to be English. More and more people are using English. It is widely being used. But I have to admit that one of my biggest pet peeves, okay, what is a pet peeve? A pet peeve is something that annoys you in particular, really, really annoys you. So he's saying, you know, one of my biggest pet peeves, what really, really irritates me or annoys me is the way we use language today. The way we, people in general, use language today. And he gives an example. He says, I teach as well. We know that Martin teaches children, okay, teaches English to children. He says, so I see my children, meaning his students, using it all the time, okay? Yeah, Mary says, I think that is when it became frustrating for me as well. Okay. Now, what kind of language is Martin and Mary talking about? I think they are talking about informal words, such as slang. Okay, even kids, little children are using slang words these days. And they're not proper words, but they are using slang words. And so Mary says, I think that is when it became frustrating for me, really irritating for me, okay? Really bothersome. I didn't really pay attention to it until when? Until I started seeing my students write, I want to go. Wanna. W-A-N-N-A. So Mary does teach as well, so she's saying that she did not realize this, okay, until she saw one of her students write, I want to go. The proper way is to write, I want to go, right? W-A-N-T space to, T-O space go. But instead, they would write W-A-N-N-A, I want to go. And also, now I notice it in myself after being in a non-English speaking country for so long. So what she's saying is that she sees it in herself, meaning she uses I want to go. She uses slang so often as well, not only children, but she does as well. When I go to write emails to graduate schools in America or something like that, so we're talking about writing emails to grad school, okay? I really have to think hard. Think hard. Be very careful and be cautious that this is not a text message. And I can't write lol, LOL, BRB, or gonna. So these are examples. So as she mentioned, not only students, children learning English or, English-speaking children, not only do children use, improper English, even adults like Mary use improper English, okay? So she's saying when I write emails to grad school, okay, where she uses or where she should use formal language, proper English, she says, I have to think very hard. I have to remind myself, you're not texting, so she tries not to write LOL, BRB, or gonna, okay? I have to use proper words, the right words. Now Martin says we do. We allow ourselves, we let ourselves get caught up. Caught up in something means to be deeply involved in doing something, okay? We tend to get, or we allow ourselves to get caught up in the idea of fast communication. That's right. Everything's about getting your idea across very quickly. Fast communication with people to get the information that we need as quickly as possible. That smartphone society that we've become, that's true. We text. Our text messages tend to get shorter and shorter and shorter. Now, this is a problem in Korea as well. I think it's a very serious problem because students, even adults, make mistakes spelling words correctly. They misspell the simplest words, the easiest words, even words that elementary students would know. But it's not only happening in English, okay? But it's also happening with different languages such as Korean as well. So anyhow, it's a smartphone society that we've become. But we really have to take a step back. Okay, what does that mean? To take a step back means to, yes, just really physically take a step back and look at what's happening. Kind of stop, pause for a little bit and look at what's happening. Okay, really, really just observe what's happening. Take a step back, okay, from that because it's making us really stupid. Yes, I think it is making us stupid. And it's something that if we are not careful, if we're not careful, we will lose that ability forever. Okay, that's the capability to do something, right? The power or capacity to do or act, okay, to do something. So we're going to lose that ability forever. And I think we really need to take a step back. Once again, take a step back, take it slow, observe things from a different perspective, and realize that language is special. That's a very good point. And then he says, and we shouldn't make it just about getting the information that we need. That's right. It shouldn't just be about getting the information that we need. Okay? Yeah, I think it's a real shame. If you say that something is a shame, you're talking about this feeling of, I don't know, it can be humiliation, it can be discouragement, especially after you realize that you have made a mistake, okay? So when you feel discouraged and you feel humiliated, especially because of a mistake that you made, you can feel shame, okay, or be shameful for something. So anyhow, he's talking about is the problems of language, how it's evolved, and how people use language the wrong way, okay? And then, of course, moving on, Mary does agree with Martin by saying, yeah, definitely. So they both have seen these problems among children, students that they teach, and in themselves. So I think it's something that we all need to kind of really think about very carefully. Anyhow, let's not make it too complicated. Let's take a listen to the actual talk conversation one more time.
My grandma's gotten an iPad, and so we are constantly texting back and forth nowadays. And I love it because she uses all of the slang from the 50s.
Wow.
If I say something that's surprising, she'll be like, jeepers, or gee whiz. And it's like these words that I totally forgot even existed.
Yeah.
It's like a flashback.
Yeah.
How do you feel about slang and how it's evolving? I mean, language is ever evolving, right? How do you feel about where it's going these days?
It is, language is an evolving group of words that become popular and they drift in and out of society. And we have to accept as well that as the world's getting smaller and each country starts to use English more and more, that will affect it as well.
Right.
But it is, I have to admit, it's one of my biggest pet peeves is the way that we use language today.
Yeah.
I teach as well, so I see my children using it all the time.
Right.
And go on, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that's when it became frustrating for me as well. I didn't really pay attention to it until I started seeing my students write I wanna go, WANNA. And also now I notice it in myself after being in a non-English speaking country for so long. When I go to write emails to graduate schools in America or something like that, I really have to think hard about this is not a text message.
Yes.
I can't write LOL or
Definitely.
BRB or GONNA. You know, I have to use proper words.
Yeah, we allow ourselves to get caught up in that idea of fast communication with people to get the information that we need as quickly as possible.
Right.
That smartphone society that we've become.
Right.
But we really have to take a step back from that because it's making us really stupid.
Right.
And it's something that if we're not careful, I think we will lose that ability forever.
Right.
And I think we really need to take a step back and realize that language is special and we shouldn't make it just about getting the information that we need. I think it's a real shame.
Yeah, definitely.
Welcome back, everyone. It's time for actual expressions. Let's first of all, as always, take a look at some vocab words from today's actual talk conversation and then move on to practice some of the patterns which we found in the conversation as well. So first of all, we're talking about how language is evolving. So we have the word evolve. Evolve. Here we go. Stress goes right there on the second syllable. Evolve. It means to advance, elaborate, or obtain, and as I mentioned, to change or develop gradually. Frustrating. Something can be frustrating. If something is frustrating, it is annoying, very irritating. Okay, upsetting is an easy synonym. Ability. Here we go. Ability. ability. We're talking about the power or capacity to do something. So capability or even competency is a good synonym. Make use of that. Shame is what? It's a feeling of humiliation or even distress, especially because you are conscious of the mistake that you made, of a very foolish or stupid mistake. So when you blame yourself, oh, why did I do that? It was stupid of me. It was wrong of me. That feeling is shame, okay? So some synonyms are abashment, disesteem, discredit, okay? Abashment is a good word for you to keep in mind as well. Okay, let's take a look at our first pattern, back and forth. Now, I did show you in action, back and forth, okay? You are moving from one direction to another and then back to that position, okay? Moving from one point to another and then going back repeatedly, okay? Blah, 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 blah. You're going back and forth, back and forth. Carl has been walking back and forth for an hour. Here we go. So, what has Carl been doing? He has been walking. So he's been walking back and forth for an hour. Maybe he was worried about something, concerned about something, or thinking about something. People often walk back and forth, right? Okay, what about this one? Drift in and out. Drift in and out of something. It means to move from one place to another, okay, very slowly. To move in and out of one place slowly. Jake would drift in and out of the kitchen to look for food. Okay, so to look for food, Jake would drift in and out of the kitchen. So he would walk into the kitchen and out of the kitchen, slowly usually, drift slowly. And then also, to be caught up in something or to get caught up in something. It means to be deeply involved in doing something, okay? So when you participate in something actively, okay, you are caught up in something, in doing something. Sally is caught up in her work and has little time for her family. Has little time for her family, which is not good. We need to learn to balance, right? So, Sally is caught up in her work, which means she's really deeply involved in her work. All she does is work, work, work. So, she has little time for her family. She does not have much time to spend with her family. Now you have an idea? Let's practice this sentence one more time. Sally is caught up in her work and has little time for her family. Okay, job well done, everyone. That is all for today's Actual Expressions.